Okay friends, it's time to get started on our rear brake service. You want to have the wheel up off the ground, and of course we're going to remove all of our lug studs and then remove the wheel. For the last one, you want to make sure you're holding on the wheel so it can't fall off and hurt you. Now that the wheel's off, we're going to continue on by spraying this area down with some penetrant. We'll get back to this in a minute. Now let's carefully use some pliers, and we're going to remove this spring. Just be careful because it is under tension and you don't want to get hurt. Set this aside, we're going to be reusing it. Next, I'm going to use a pry bar. I'm going to come in between this area here. You can see it coming through near the pad. And I'm going to carefully do this, and that's going to press in that caliper piston for me. Once you have that all the way in, let's continue on by following our sensor wire. Now, this is only going to be on the passenger side rear brakes. Get that out of there. You want to remember exactly how this went so you can reinstall it in the same areas. Comes around this way. There's a white clip under here. Another one. And now it leads under here. Generally, you can reach up in there and you can go ahead and pop that apart. I'm just going to go ahead and remove this right here to give us some access. All right. Grab onto the ears on this box right here. Now we can open this up. Now we're going to go ahead and grab onto that wire for the sensor. That's going to be the one furthest towards the front here. Pull it out of there. Grab onto this tab right by where my thumb is. Give it a little squeeze. Separate these two areas. Once you have it separated, you want to inspect it. If you see any funny colors, it's corrosion, it needs to be dealt with. This looks good, so let's set it aside. We'll go ahead and grab onto that sensor wire, get it right out of the way. Now we can continue on to removing our caliper sliders. Looking at the back side of the caliper, you're going to find two black covers. Just pop that right off of there. Set it aside, you're going to be reusing it. Now with those out of the way, let's continue on by removing our slider pins here. For that, we're going to use an 8mm Allen head. Now we're just going to remove the caliper. If it feels like it's stuck on there, it's probably because of the inner pad being stuck in the bracket. Once you have it off, let's continue on by pulling this inner pad out of here. Remove that sensor wire as well, and now we're going to set the caliper aside, making sure we put no pressure on the flex hose. Let's get that outer pad out of here. It's frozen in there. Set that aside. Now let's remove our two caliper bracket bolts. I'm going to use my 16mm socket. Get this first one so it's loose. We'll leave it in there just a couple threads, and then we'll remove the other one. There's our bracket. We'll set it aside. Next, I'm going to use a 6mm Allen head socket to remove this bolt. Set that aside. Take one of your lug studs. We're going to go ahead and put this in here. This is going to kind of keep us safe. Then we'll continue on with our hammer and break this free. All right. Now that we have that out of the way, let's continue on to spraying down this area with some parts cleaner, get off all that brake dust and rust or anything else, and then we'll spray down this adjuster right here with a tiny bit of penetrant just to make sure it's going to function down the road. Inspect your e-brake shoes. You want to make sure they're still in good condition. I'm going to use some penetrant right up in this area, just a tiny bit. Now we're going to move along to cleaning up the hub area here. You want to make sure it's free and clear of any debris that might be on there. Let's use some copper never sees on the mating surface here. Paying special attention to your mounting bolt hole. Put a little extra in there. Time for the brand new rotor. Go ahead and slide it on there, line up your mounting bolt hole, put in your bolt. Next, we're going to move along to cleaning up our caliper bracket. Basically, the 4 corners that you want to clean are right along these areas here. Make sure you get inside that entire area, and of course, along the edges. You can use a brush or a sanding disc, whatever you have. I've got all 4 corners cleaned up. The next thing I want to do is just take some caliper grease. I'm going to put a tiny amount along the areas that I sanded down. That way there it's going to help keep the moisture away so it won't rust again. All right. Now let's come to the caliper. We're going to go ahead and remove these slider pins. We'll set this aside. And then what we want to do is make sure we clean up the slider pins so they're nice and smooth, and of course the threads of our mounting bolts. Once you have those clean, let's also use our brush on the caliper itself. Just remove as much of this brake dust as possible. Once you have it clean, inspect along the piston area here. Make sure it's not leaking any fluid. If it is, you need to go ahead and replace that caliper. This looks good. Now we can take some more of our caliper grease. We're going to go right along the piston area of this, the metal aspect of it, along both of the back sides of these ears right here. This is going to help with vibration dampening and noise reduction. We'll just put some more of this caliper grease right inside the caliper slider holes here. There we are. Let's set this aside, move back to the bracket. Let's take that caliper bracket. We're going to slide it right over this area here. We're going to start in both of our mounting bolts. I always like to use a little bit of red thread locker on these. Once they're both started, we'll snug them up, and then we're going to torque them to 48 foot-pounds. Now it's going to be time to prepare our inner pad. That's going to be the one that has the 3 clips that go into the caliper piston. This is going to be the area where you want to put on your brand new brake pad sensor. Just go ahead and line it up just like this, and then we're going to carefully press it in. Listen for a nice click. Give it a little tug. You want to make sure it's nice and secure. Now we can take that wire. We're going to bring it right up and through the caliper here. Take that pad. You want to line up all 3 of the ears inside of your caliper piston and then lock it in. Make sure it's secure. Let's take that outer pad. We're going to carefully slide it right into the bracket here. You want to make sure that it fits in and it can slide around. If it feels like it's stuck for any reason, it's going to cause an issue for braking. Now let's lubricate our 2 caliper slider pins. Put a nice coating on those. Grab that caliper, get it into position. Start in both of your slider pins. Now we're going to snug these up. Once they're snug, we'll torque them both to 26 foot-pounds. Make sure you put those covers back on there, help keep the moisture out. Now we can start securing our brake sensor wire here. You definitely want to make sure this thing is not flopping around in any way. Put it up and in between here. Run this in along where it belongs, along the back side there. Get this into position. Lock it in. Can't get my hand up in there. Get down into these white areas here. Make sure that we lock this in as well. Connect this in, listen for a click. All right, give it a nice tug, make sure it's secure. Slide it right into the box. Make sure it's locked in. Close it up, make sure it's protected. We can take this. This is just a plastic nut, so you essentially just want to bottom it out, make sure it's snug. Now it's time for our clip. Once again, you want to be very careful when you're dealing with this. Slide the ear into there. Pull this over. Now here's where the hard part is. I'm just going to try to flex this. Try to get it right in there. Give it a nice tug. Make sure it's secure and it's definitely not going to fall off. Let's grab our wheel. Now we're just going to start in all 5 of our lug studs, then we'll snug them up in a crisscross manner. With the wheel back on the ground so it can't spin, let's go ahead and torque these to 103 foot-pounds. Torqued. Okay friends, we got the job done. What's left to do now? Now you're going to do the same on the other side of the vehicle. The only difference is going to be you're not going to have the sensor on the inboard pad. Aside from that, you're going to want to make sure you get inside the car. Pump up that brake pedal, make sure it's nice and firm. Get under the hood, double check your master cylinder, make sure that brake fluid's full. After that, take it for a road test. Thanks.